Hello and Happy New Year, I'm Don.
And Happy New Year, I'm Cindy. Welcome to Pearls of Liberty. Today is Saturday, December 31st, 2011. Our very last opportunity to comment on things
before the world ends.
No, that's not until December 21st,
oh, okay.
2012.
That was close.
There is an interesting, would you like to just mention the December 21st, 2012 plan that some people have?
Oh yeah, reading about Benjamin Fulford's group of the White Dragon group that plans to begin a new world, and yeah, the world's going to end in 2012 at the end on December, I think, 21st. Is it 21st or 25th? Anyway,
it's the 21st.
21st. Well, we skip Christmas then.
That's when the Mayan
This is the
calendar.
downfall of this plan. Anyway,
that's when the Mayan calendar ends.
So the Mayan calendar ends, and then we're going to have a world the end of the world party, and in a few days later, I think he said 3 days later, we're going to start the new year, the new calendar, because apparently there's been some problem that the calendar was off by a few days, and then January 1st, 2013 would start like on the 24th or something like that. So yeah, what do we do with Christmas? This is the big problem.
Well, that's part of the multiple day party, right?
Well, I guess you have Christmas during that period. It's a little early because it's not the 25th yet. So.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, well, there have been other things in history. So yeah, I'm sure people might be thinking things like, oh, well, there's the changing of the times and the seasons, and that the Antichrist does, and this must be the coming into the end world, the government, because these guys are changing the calendar like prophesied. And I'm thinking, nah, there's been calendar shifts throughout all of history, and if they succeed in doing this, it actually would be kind of a nice coup of the existing powers that be, and these guys actually want to share their power. And the whole big beef with the Asia crowd is that after World War II, America and Europe were supposed to develop Africa and Asia, and they didn't. They just exploited it, and so now it's time to put that right. That's what the lawsuit in New York is all about, etc. So we'll see if all that happens. I decided to shift my subscription this year from Joel Skousen because I got tired of him promoting Romney, and otherwise his analysis is great. But I like Fulford, so I'm going to try his blog for a year, and it's just a tiny bit pricier, but paid by the month, so that's going to be interesting. I'll be able to keep up with all of his stuff on a regular basis and not have to depend on the irregular interviews on YouTube.
Yeah, there's some very interesting news coming from that quarter from Benjamin Fulford. And last week we commented a little bit on North Korea, and there's even further speculation about what the death of Kim Jong-Il might mean, and it has broader implications. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, it gets pretty intricate, and there are a lot of details. Apparently, the Kim Jong-il, who was the supposed dictator of Korea, who had just died, was actually a double. Not only was he a double, he was one of two doubles. And apparently both doubles got taken out. Now, the original Kim Jong-il died a while ago, and then there was this... He died apparently... And now Fulford hasn't confirmed this. It's just a rumor that he's passed on. So take this with somewhat of a grain of salt. But the original Kim Jong-il died through a poisoning by some prostitute, and then they had to cover that over because they weren't prepared to deal with it. But then so then they had two doubles, and really it's been the military cabal in North Korea that's been running Korea ever since the beginning. And this guy was just a puppet. They trot him out and make him look like the supreme dictator and a scary, evil-looking little guy. But they're puppets like always. And this, I thought, was one of the most interesting Fulford comments I'd heard in a long time. That, not that I've been following all that long, but that he said that the major shift in his thinking came several years ago when talking to Chinese people. They told him in reference to North Korea that the Chinese, look at North Korea as a colony of the United States. So isn't that interesting?
That's fascinating.
Because what we're really known as throughout, when I say we, I mean the image of the United States throughout the world, is largely based on our military power, or I should say the military power of the banking cabal that wields the co-opted armed services of the United States. There's a lot of really good people in the U.S. military who are waking up really fast and who will not take up arms against the American people in the NDAA and all that. You hear rumblings of that. But what they're doing is they're weeding out the ones that will. So still remains to be seen what will happen there. But what Fulford said is the Chinese guy told them that this was a vassal state of the United States. And yeah, where do they get their power? What do we think? That North Korea developed these nukes on their own? No, they were given them. And so this is one of the most interesting things to come out of this shakeout of power is the plans of the Rothschilds and the European bankers are to unite North and South Korea. And that will look like a wonderful, peaceful thing that will get the world all excited about the potential for peace, but it's still going to be in the major control of the bankers. It'll take them a while to accomplish that. Probably won't happen within the next year because there's such a difference in the standard of living between the North and the South. So they're going to have to even that out gradually. But the plan is to make sort of meld this representative government in the South with the dictatorship in the North and the militarism of the North, and make a manufacturing powerhouse out of North Korea. So these globalists manipulate economies and nations. They know that when a nation has been kept down for a really long time, that people in just really horrible conditions, they will really be excellent at filling a role that's given to them. They're hungry, so they go for it, and that's what's going to happen. When people get lazy and fat and sloppy and take things for granted, like in the United States, well, then they can be used and abused, and they don't even know it. And it's quite a difference. So these guys bring up nations, take down nations, and there's a real shift going on in Asia that's related to this death of Kim Jong-Il II. So that's what's going down.
Interesting stuff.
But just also, according to Fulford, there's been a shift in the power structure of the elite. You have guys within the elite that realize that there's been tremendous abuse of their power, and apparently George Bush Sr. has been removed from influence. So that's a major shift, and although we can't say that that's necessarily a victory, because the whole way that these guys work is they will adjust their power and control in order to stay in power and control. And that's, so they morph into something that will continue to wield influence and power. So they still need to be taken out. It's not just the one man, but he's fallen out of favor, influence, he's getting older, whatever. Maybe he's just been kicked up into another position, so who knows? I don't take that too seriously. But we definitely are in a time of shifting and changing into something new, and this is an opportunity. This is a political window, and people that are awake can take advantage and participate in this and bring about the world that we've always been hoping for.
Sure, and in order to do that, as you just said, people need to be awake and aware. So keep talking to your family and friends about liberty issues and about issues like the NDAA, the military being allowed to arrest and detain people. Make noise. I mean, it's time to squawk and kick. And if enough people resist and object to these new innovations that the elite are trying to make to increase their power, they won't be able to do it. So, however, I mean, it'd be great to rid the world of this evil. But even if that doesn't happen, just restraining it is a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah.
And didn't you tell me this week that there were some comments that the mainstream media people are becoming more aware of the mainstream media not being very truthful? And
yeah, I think there's been a major break in the dam with a couple things, with the NDAA and the treatment, that the attempted whitewashing that just went over by a lead balloon, and the forced leaking of this into the mainstream media, and also Ron Paul's coverage. That's the smears against him just aren't working. Well, they're working in some quarters, but the people that take their cue from the mainstream media are really starting to see through this and recognize that the man's not a racist. And then there's a secondary attack. Well, maybe he let too many people that had racist tendencies have influence in his administration. And I think even there, people are starting to think, do we really want somebody that's controlling and autocratic, or do we want somebody that will release autonomy and let people run their own lives? Because I think Americans are getting tired of a society that tells them what they can do and think, the political correctness and all of that. So people don't necessarily think that Ron Paul should function as a censor over the 14 newsletters that he put out at one time and while he was working in medical practice. So I think that people are seeing through the double standard of the media.
That's great. We certainly hope so. There was somewhat of I want to say a small victory, but if it's one of the issues that's near and dear to your heart, it doesn't seem small to you. Smart meters are, PG&E is backing off and saying that people can keep their analog meters if they want to. And now there was legislation passed in 2005 allowing people to opt out of having smart meters. So there's really no way that PG&E can get around it. And now they are shifting. You can keep your analog meter, or I believe get an analog meter back. You probably will have to pay a little bit more for your utilities, but considering the health risk, I think it's worthwhile for most people.
So this is just California, because obviously PG&E is in California.
Correct.
But is there something similar in other states where there's any legislation?
The legislation, the 2005 legislation was federal legislation.
Okay.
So it's not just a local thing, it's federal.
Yeah.
What Bill Murray says in Scrooge.
We actually had Congress pass a good law back then, huh?
Yeah. Well, they may have thought that people wouldn't be aware of the law, and they could go sneak this by unnoticed.
Yeah, these guys like to say, hey, well, you had an out and you didn't use it, so they cover themselves that way.
Yeah. So if you are concerned about it, have health issues regarding it, look up the legislation. We'll put a link to
even
it.
if you don't have health issues, if you don't do something about it, you will. So we have EMF protective devices around our house, and we take other measures, even though we're renting, so we don't necessarily have control over what gets installed on the house. But the health issues are very serious, and they're subtle. That's the problem with a lot of this health stuff. It's all very subtle. It takes a toll over a period of time, and the whole cancer industry thrives on us never finding the true root cause, which is it comes from multiple places. But the attack on our health is very serious. This is one more really significant attack on the human body.
Well, ideally, it's best to not be in any more electromagnetic fields than possible, and even just being in a room with walls that have electrical wiring passing through them creates an electromagnetic field. So we've actually been talking about, we hope to build a house at some point, and we've been talking about the possibility of maybe having electricity only run through an inner wall. And of course there are building codes that require an outlet every 12 feet, but if we get off the grid, maybe we can avoid those. And we've been talking about ways to limit the amount of electricity in a home to places where it won't create EMFs. So,
Yeah. Yeah, the right angle corners and rooms actually create additional EMFs, and there's all kinds of things you can do, but it's hard in the traditional housing to get around these things.
yeah, as with so many areas of life, we just need new paradigms, and hopefully, if we set the calendar back to 0 next December. No, we don't need to do that. I mean, these things we need to change the way we think about life and consider that there are other possibilities. There are other means of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we find ourselves here on New Year's Eve of 2011, and for Pearl Culture, we did watch a couple of movies. Well, one specifically that we want to mention that's not a New Year's movie, but we thought we would just mention some New Year's movies that are interesting, that have ideas that can, it lets you think about a shift. And one is, maybe one of the favorites, is Trading Places.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Aaron Russo.
Yeah.
It's a comedy, but it's about very real principles and how market makers manipulate the market.
Commodity trading and insider stuff, and yeah, and really watch that movie and you'll know how the Rothschilds got their power, because what they did was they cornered the market in the British stock market based on Napoleon at Waterloo, and what happens in Trading Places is really pretty similar to that. It's dealing with the orange juice commodities market, but it's a really funny comedy with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, it is. And a movie about shifting values in a family is Ordinary People. That is not a lightweight movie. If you become depressed easily,
I don't think of that as that's a New Year's movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
The mother, the final scene is right around New Year's. The movie takes place beginning, I think, around September, October. And it goes through the holiday season. So, shift there, just of the father and the son realize what is valuable to them in their lives, and as I said, it's a little depressing.
Yeah,
Don't watch it alone and sad.
And the mother just kind of can't handle the loss of the son, and so she sort of pretends. Reality sort of becomes pretend for her, huh?
Well, she just she just kind of tightens up her girdle and determines to go on.
Yeah, doesn't really grieve all the way through stuff.
Yeah. So more light-hearted is the Hudsucker Proxy, and it's a Coen Brothers movie. It's a comedy, but it has some substance to it, and
because he invented the hula hoops.
For kids.
Yeah, for kids.
And another just pure fun and no significant meaning is Down and Out in Beverly Hills. If you watch Ordinary People and you need to recover from that, watch Down and Out in Beverly Hills. Just a lot of fun. And then a really good, interesting film that not a lot of people have seen is Strange Days from 1995, and the climax of the film is on New Year's Eve, passing from 1999 into 2000. And they didn't make a good call because life was definitely not, and is still not, as whoever wrote it foresaw that it might be on New Year's Eve 2000. But a very interesting film and great drama. So we should end there with our New Year's picks, but we did see a film this week called The Wave. And it was a fiction, but it was based on an actual experiment that was done at one time.
Yeah, it's another movie based on Das Experiment, which took place at Stanford University, or The Experiment. The German film on that was called Das Experiment. And this, again, The Wave, is another German film. And it's really interesting that the German people are thinking about these things, or at least there's filmmakers that are encouraging the German people to think about the whole blindly following authority thing. So the premise of the film is it takes place in a high school classroom, and not entirely in the classroom, but it's a teacher who is looking at the form of government that is fascism, and basically an authoritarian style government, and that it's fascism, and they actually get so caught up in it that it becomes scary to some people, beginning to see through it, some people not, and they realize its power though. So it's very interesting, because the students were thinking, oh, this could never happen in Germany again, and then you realize that it could. So it's disturbing, because you realize how vulnerable people are when they don't have a strong or healthy individual identity. There's a real tendency to feel the power of a group and get your fulfillment of your personhood through a group. It's quite a short circuit of the way that we're wired as individual carriers of God's presence, to give that over to a group. And when it's done in a good and holy way, it can be really good and powerful. But when it's done so that it's not really guided, and so when it's super aggressive, then it can become dangerous. A godly community could be serving others, as you've seen orders of monks in the Catholic Church, and I'm not promoting the Catholic Church, but Christian orders have been powerful ways in which groups of people can serve others and serve one another. But this whole collective giving of your individuality to become part of a group and your identity through that, it can really be a danger. And whenever there's times of turmoil like what we're going into now, that's a danger to be aware of. So we recommend the movie. The characters are well done and acted and very interesting.
Sure. And really, just to emphasize what we talk about all the time is individual liberty. Individual liberty is kind of the antithesis of this kind of autocracy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually there on the Pearls of Liberty website. There's a tab that says it's a comparison between freedom and fascism or something like that. There's a table that we took from a guy that did a documentary film on that subject, on looking into the ideological roots of Nazism. And people don't realize that it's socialism. And people think, oh, that's just the government taking care of you. But it has much more to do with the loss of individuality. So whenever you get a philosophy that sacrifices individual liberty for the good of the group, beware. America has been a bastion of freedom and liberty until, maybe even all of last century, but still kind of running on fumes. But our strength has always been the emphasis on individual liberty. And even today, when people are in the armed forces, there are many people who will not go along with an order to turn against their own people. And we saw some of that this week, and that was encouraging. Another report of that.
Yeah, so be who you are. Learn how to, if you're broken, if you're sad, if you feel alone, get healed. I mean, there are a lot of great ministries that will help you work through issues, and you can go through talk therapy with a counselor. Have integrity in yourself about who you are, so that your identity doesn't need to come from outside, because
don't be a follower. Yeah. Find out who you are and be the best you that you can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. How are you watching this? Are you following us?
And what kind of a New Year should they have?
A happy one.
Happy New Year!